Well, then another question, John. Why don't we get back to talking about the language itself? You mentioned earlier pronunciation. Now, Koine, I mentioned Koine earlier. That's not the only pronunciation for ancient Greek. Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah. What's the other one, and what's the difference between the two?
Oh my goodness, this is a fun story, and it became a really big issue actually in the development of England. And there were points that you could get, they called it rustification. You could get ejected from Oxford depending on which pronunciation you used.
Oh, wow.
So it was a big issue, and I'm glad it's not as big an issue today,
Sure.
because really the point is to use the language and to read the New Testament in the original language, that to actually do study in the original language, get behind the English. So I'm glad it's not high stakes, but there are historic options. So around the time of the Reformation, the common pronunciation was called a Byzantine pronunciation. It would sound like modern Greek to us. Okay. A lot of E sounds. And then Erasmus came around and said, look, I want to have my pronunciation when I read classic texts. And he did this through a story between a lion and a bear about how they should train their children. So maybe that was a way for him to step back and not worry about getting attacked too terribly by either side.
Sure.
It's interesting academic argument. So
Yeah.
this discussion between this lion and bear. And so he wanted to go back and recreate a classical sound.
Okay.
And so it became known as the Erasmian pronunciation. And that was for classical Greek, which sounded a little different than Koine Greek, sounded at the New Testament period. Okay. And then now what we call the Erasmian pronunciation, basically it was the non-modern pronunciation for a long time. Okay. But it changed as people at Oxford and other English institutions wanted to make the original language more accessible. It became more of a pronunciation that was easy to learn.
Okay.
So it became very anglicized. Oh, so Erasmus would object to the Erasmian pronunciation today.
As we currently call it. How
so
interesting. Yeah.
The Erasmian pronunciation, there's lots of variations on it because its primary focus is to be easy for an English speaker to distinguish letters. Okay. So that system will have different sounds for letters that had the same sound historically. Okay. So one version of the Erasmian system would distinguish Omicron and Omega, have A versus O. Some other versions of the Erasmian pronunciation, actually the one that we use in this course, it follows Machen and Smythe, historical Greek teachers that are prominent. So it's a traditional Erasmian program where those two letters are identical, but still their diphthongs are different than the historical period pronunciation. So this course, thankfully, provides two options. Okay. So it provides an Erasmian version and a historical Koine version, so a recreated sound of how the language sounded in biblical times.
Okay, interesting. And if you want to learn what a diphthong means, you'll have to take the course to learn that.